This bill legalizes sawed-off shotguns.
Hello, everyone. Inside jokes starting from the get-go. Welcome to ShiftLess, the one, the only podcast dedicated 2,038% to nothing but bicycles,
Car troubles, dog troubles,
and shark guns.
and shark guns.
Good morning, Bradford.
Is it a good morning?
I don't know. Are the clusters unflocking?
There's light. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay. All right.
My wife's out of town, which always...
Oh, man, that turns your life upside down.
Really?
Your world usually goes to shit when Paula's gone.
I'm so codependent.
I know the feeling.
I can't breathe without her.
Jan's taking off on her Florida trip in the not too distant future, and we'll be in the same plane at that point.
It's such a weird thing because I so look forward to it, like her being gone, and then the minute she leaves, I'm like, it's such a dichotomy. So one of my dogs apparently didn't think it was important to go outside this morning, so that's how my morning started.
Okay, would that be Leonard?
I don't know.
Don't know which one?
No, I think it was Lucy because she self-shames.
Okay.
But there was, I'll spare you all the details, but a gigantic pile. And then pee right next to it. Luckily, it's all tile. So that's how it started.
So somebody didn't like the wet grass on their tummy this morning.
Apparently.
While we're talking about it, what's our weather situation, Bradford?
It's, for the moment, it's let up, but... it's still raining. We've had rain off and on. I mean, I don't know. I slept most of the night.
Sure.
I just know it's wet. The rain continues. The trees and the plants are all super happy. Yeah. The trails have been closed for weeks on end.
And they're going to be closed for weeks on end further.
Yeah, it looks like...
I think it's fair.
Yeah, it looks like we have rain every day for the next 10 days. At least a small chance.
So we are recording for the second time, right? We've done this once before, I think.
Oh, here. Yeah. I think this is the second time here.
From Unity Park in beautiful Argyle, Texas. At some point or another, we will have trains going by.
Oh, yeah. It's inevitable.
It can't not happen.
You can turn this into a drinking game. Every time a train goes by or Kevin hits a microphone, you have to drink.
We're going to talk about what's something Brad and I have been working on for some time that's finally started to come to fruition. I would not label it a final product. Our Chef's Kiss Bikepacking weekend. We're going to talk about that, but in the meantime, it's just like I said, hopefully the clusters are unflocking. I got to hear the stories. I had everything set up here ahead of time, got here early.
I know you did.
It's like, all right, we're in the groove today.
And I was ready to leave the house until I got in the car, in my truck, and went, kunk, kunk. Nothing. I was like, and my kid took my truck last night.
Okay.
But it's been struggling lately.
You had spoken of battery issues over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in my truck, because it's a heavy duty, it has 2 batteries. So when you replace the battery, you have to replace both batteries. So that's going to be costly, and I have to get that handled. I tried to jump it, but I don't think Kieran's little BMW...
When you started talking about jumping it, it's like there's nothing over there that's going to turn that thing over.
So I finally went, Kieran's not going to be awake for another 2 hours anyways. 19-year-old kid. So I told him, I said, hey, I'm just going to take your car. And Hail Mary, I put a trickle charger on it when I left.
Okay.
So that'll
I learned the hard way a long time ago. Once that battery gives you the first sign that, I should probably pay attention to this sometime, not in the not too distant future, do it the next day.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Sure, it's easy to say. It's hard to execute just from time and expense and pain in the acidness. And
it's going to be $500 plus.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
It's not.
It's all good.
It's just money.
So money doesn't mean nothing.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Money's fake.
It,
Isn't that what Kanye said?
is it? I don't know. I don't listen to Kanye, but I agree 1,000%
Yeah.
with that one. It's all a contrived system.
It really is. We
But-
should go back to bartering.
I would be on board with that. I mean, was that the extent of the battery issue, or because you said there was more to the story, or was that the
Oh.
dog?
I don't know. I'm not a truck scientist. But then this shows up on my center console, and it's showing Linux, and it's trying to download a 0 out of 100 files, and
Yeah, it
it might just be a battery drain thing.
No, because mine sent all weekend long. Mine was sending the message to update the software, and I kept rejecting it because it said you got to leave the truck off, and hey, there can be side effects.
Yeah.
And I'm having side effects.
Mine hasn't said anything of the sort, but
So mine, I rejected it each time, but evidently at the ranch it did automatically do the update one time. So now when I hit a bump, all 4 windows go down,
awesome.
and I have
That's a great feature.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a feature, not a bug. And I noticed this morning I have some sort of light on the dashboard for collision avoidance or some sort of yellow collision something light on the dashboard that's never been there before. So
I think the machines are ready to take over.
we need to roll episode 1 then, don't we? But any other foibles, battery related at the moment, or truck related at the moment, or Paula being gone related at the moment? Is our first train on the way?
Inbound. It feels like Monday.
Well, might as well get it out of the way. Good grief. I forgot about this feature of this park.
It's a feature, not a bug.
It is. So speaking of this weekend, we did launch our inaugural Chef's Kiss Bikepacking weekend. I think it's fair to say all the pieces were in place for that to be a true clusterfuck of its own and completely fall apart, but I don't think it did.
Somehow it didn't. Somehow everything went as good as it could be.
I was pretty pleased with the end result. All things, it could be better, and
Yeah.
we're going to talk about that some here.
I think it could always be better.
But I think the basics, the foundation, the flour and butter of it all, I think between your food and what I think was a pretty good route, really everything else just comes together if you have those basic pieces in place.
Yeah. Great route. The weather was, I guess, about as good as it could be for first week of June.
I knew it was going to be a coin toss.
Mm-hmm.
We had it all. We had heat, we had rain, cloud cover,
Wind.
full sun,
Yeah.
and bugs.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was the one thing I really did not account for was the bug situation.
It got really hot right before we got back to 4R on Sunday.
Sunday.
And I think everybody, we all stopped at the shower situation and just under the spigot, just cooling off. The irony of all of that is when I went to get my truck out of the dispersed camping area, the bugs weren't bad at all.
Oh, okay, because they were bad that morning.
Yeah. Adam was even saying, hey, I'm going to stay up here if you don't need my help down there, because he was overheated too. We were all overheated at that point. I was like, okay, but just know I'm not going to be in a hurry. And then I thought second of that, and I go, I might be because of the bugs. But I got down there, and it took me a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden I was like, where are the bugs? So it wasn't bad.
Maybe they all feasted on me when I was there.
It was kind of strange. Excuse me.
All good, all good.
Oh.
So maybe we just kind of walk through things chronologically.
Sure.
as they happened over the weekend, and we'll fill the audience in on how things worked, how it looked, and along the way as we come up with feedback for ourselves, so somewhat of a debriefing. And
Did you get any feedback?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Not from everyone, and the short version is the feedback I got was extremely positive.
Yeah.
Extremely, some suggestions, but extremely positive
We do need to
feedback.
put coffee in the contract for the future.
Yeah, coffee I consider part of breakfast myself, but that was just, I mean, hey, I'll take the fall for that one. I can be an assumptive person at times. There's no doubt about that.
That's fair. And, I figured 50%. I still don't, fortunately, coffee didn't become an issue. I think everybody that wanted coffee had coffee. But I guess in order to talk about the weekend, we need to back up even further, just from a staging perspective. And so Caleb and Adam and I added an extra element to everything by planning to ride up there on Friday. So that backed us up to Thursday. So I shopped on Wednesday and then prepped everything on Thursday. And then Thursday afternoon, Caleb and I took off. Actually, I drove to 4R and staged the food for Saturday night and left the food or Saturday night and Sunday morning, and then left the food for 4R in an ice chest in the back of my truck, including the, then drove to 4R, met up with Caleb. He had the Blackstone that I used and an empty propane tank. To remind me, I'll tell you a funny story about that propane tank too. And then we staged my truck there at the dispersed camping area, and then Caleb and I drove on home. And Friday morning, we rendezvoused at my house, and the plan was, I think we were going to do garage coffee at 9 and roll shortly thereafter. And Caleb had some nature break issues, and he showed up late, so we got a little bit of a late start. We were blessed slash cursed with a tailwind all the way there that was right in the wheelhouse of almost our average. So there was many times where we were set in the tailwind and just cooking because we were getting no breeze, no cooling effect.
No cool headwindish. And how many miles was your place to 4R?
65.
65 on Friday.
Yeah.
With a tailwind and heat.
And excessive heat and high dew point. It was like 74 dew point or something like that.
Humid.
Yeah, it was thick.
So let me just take a quick pause and sidebar here for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about. The basic structure of this Chef's Kiss bikepacking weekend was we were going to stage from 4R Ranch Vineyards and Winery the ride Saturday morning, but with camping available Friday night. And everybody camped Friday night. Nobody showed up Saturday morning.
Right.
And ride from there about a 50-mile route to Brad's Yoga Retreat, Ponderosa Guest Ranch. And overnight there. And camping was provided at both facilities, but cabins were available too. We'll touch on that in a bit, I am certain.
But were they available?
We'll touch on that in a bit. And then Sunday morning, ride from Ponderosa Guest Ranch back to 4R, roughly another 50 miles. It was a 100-mile loop, pretty damn close.
103.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not flat.
Not flat at all. Incredibly beautiful. I'm torn between which route was prettier. However, I'll say the end of Sunday, just getting back to 4R in the midst of the heat, was brutal.
That slope up the last
it was
7 miles or whatever it is.
The only thing that put more fuel in my tank was I caught Lambo.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm not going to let this old fucker finish in front of me. So I sucked it up and I passed him and I go, "What's going on? Good looking," even though I'm dying on the inside, and I just scorched away from him. No, it was absolutely gorgeous route. The other thing I was gonna mention, just as an interesting sidebar, Caleb and I are both running the Garmin 1040S, and in one of the last couple of updates, they actually have hazards and notifications that are route specific.
Okay.
So, for example, when I ride Jeter Loop, there's apparently someone has reported a pothole there. So it tells you there's a pothole coming up.
Okay.
Shows a little hazard sign, says pothole, gives you a countdown, half a mile, quarter mile, blah, blah, blah. So when we were riding to Ponderosa from 4R, I got a notification and it said animal ahead or something. I can't remember the exact verbiage. And I asked Caleb, I go, "Is yours showing animal detected or something like that?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm getting the same thing." And it wasn't 100 yards later, this freaking Cujo dog comes out from nowhere. Just, sure enough, that was the dog. So I think that's a cool feature.
I think that's an excellent feature.
Yeah. It's the first time that I've had the animal one and something actually happened. I've seen that before, and previously I had thought maybe it meant there was a dead animal in the road. No, this one was definitely alive.
So basically an animal hazard of some sort.
Yes, and that may have been the word it was, animal hazard. I can't remember.
I think that's a fantastic feature. My only concern is because I get this request all of the time, and personally I think it's impossible to fulfill, but maybe that's just me being narrow-minded. I get people asking all the time for me to create routes that avoid vicious dogs. I don't know how to do that. Yes, if there is this feature there that other people are crowdsourcing information like that, I get it. That tells me there's the potential of there being a vicious dog there, but the reality is I think that potential is going to be on almost every road we go down.
And that's what I was going to say. It's like, it's inevitable if you're going to cruise beautiful back roads in a completely rural area, you're going to encounter loose dogs. And they're going to be excited to see you.
Yeah.
They're just saying hello.
99.73% of the time, that's correct.
Yeah. And I think it's important for most people to understand that this is going to sound maybe a little crazy, but dogs can smell fear. And if you greet them with cheer, most of the time they reciprocate. If they come charging out and you go, "Hey, buddy, what's going on?" They're kind of like, "Oh, hey."
I agree completely. That's been my strategy, and it's served me pretty darn well over the years.
Whereas if you're like, oh my God, or you're like, don't, or you get on the defensive, or you try to squirt them with water or whatever, it generally just heightens the whole situation.
Yeah, I agree. But it's not for me to tell others what to do, but I'm happy to share my experiences.
Yeah.
And for me, it's worked out pretty well over the years. Essentially just to welcome the dog into my environment.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
Manage your environment.
Yeah.
But the only thing
I'm an environmental manager.
The only thing I'll say about that feature that I was discussing is I don't know that there is a way to, like on Waze, if it says cop ahead or whatever, it asks you still there or not there. Whereas this feature, I'm sure there's a way to go in maybe post ride and go, hey, that pothole's not there anymore. Because that has been showing up ever since that update happened.
Sure.
And I don't know that I've ever seen the pothole that they're talking about. And my question is, once it gets repaired, somebody has to report it and say, hey, there's not a pothole there anymore.
My guess is there's just not enough sample size for them to incorporate that feature yet.
Yeah.
So they're probably erring to the side of caution. It's like, if somebody reports it once, we're just going to leave it there. And if it's not there, more power to them. They were aware of something for an extra 10 seconds. Maybe they wouldn't have been.
Yeah, but if somebody reports one every 100 yards that's not there, and then all of a sudden all you're doing is seeing,
Like the cops do when they want to set up a trap, they'll go down the highway ahead of time and say, "Cop here,
Yeah.
cop here, cop
Yeah.
here." People get tired of it, and they're the eighth one.
Yeah.
Gotcha. No, I like that feature a lot, and I would like to get more detail on that functionality. And how do you say if that's not an issue anymore?
Yeah.
Things like vicious dogs, obviously that's going to be sporadic.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, if somebody reports a vicious dog at a spot, I wouldn't want anyone to be able to say it's not there anymore, because maybe it's put up one day, but it's out the next.
Yeah.
So,
And I think it was on the return to 4R, we got to a steep ass climb, and I saw this dog coming out, big dog, and I was like, "Hey, buddy," because I was like, "There's no way I'm getting away from this
Right.
dog," because I'm already in bailout gear. We all are. And this dog just comes out, and I was like, "Thank God you're a sweetheart," because my only choice would be to go back down the hill.
yeah. Let me see how quickly I can turn this around.
Yeah.
The only, I've had 2 bad experiences with dogs on the bike, a couple when I was marking course and stuff like that, but nothing where I was bitten. Just a couple times where it's like, if I hadn't been aware, it could have easily happened, sort of thing.
Well, we know a couple of people that have been bitten.
Oh, I know people that have been bitten.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, and I'm not saying it won't happen. It could happen to me, and that's what I'm saying. It's something to be cognizant of and aware of. But I think there are a lot of people that actually make the situation worse, kind of like what you touched on.
No, there's times, when a dog is on a mission. I had an experience as a child on a bike, on a BMX bike, riding a gravel road up in Vivian, Louisiana. And I was riding a gravel road.
There's good gravel around Vivian.
Oh, it really is.
We're going to be doing an event there. Maybe a Chef's Kiss. Who knows?
And I'm riding, and I hear this just Cujo sounding dog from underneath the carport. You know how it echoes underneath the carport. And I'm 12 years old or something, and this pit bull comes charging towards me, and I was scared out of my mind. And I was like, this dog's going to bite me. And instinctually, I got off my bike and put my bike between me and the dog, because I was like, I'm going to have to use my bike as a weapon. And the dog kind of got there and couldn't figure out how to get to me through the bike. And I just kept walking and keeping my bike between me and the dog. And eventually the dog gave up, but my heart was through my chest,
Sure.
Because it's before everything. My parents didn't have a clue where I was, or I didn't have a phone. I couldn't call anybody. Nobody was around. It was during the day. People were at work or whatever. But luckily, nothing came of it.
Weekend, in a nutshell, I think it's fair to say weather is always a factor, as our animals are always a factor in some form or another. So y'all rolled in on your 65-mile bike in, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon or so, something like that?
I think we got there earlier than that.
Okay.
We got there.
I think I ended up getting there like 4:15 or 4:30 because
we were already set up.
Traffic was absolutely ridiculous on 35.
We got there. We set up. Lambo got there while we were setting up and drove straight up top. And I was communicating with him. And those boys went and took a shower and cleaned up. I just put on my clothes. I wasn't going to tease myself because I knew it was going to be hot that night. And then we drove my truck up to the top. We had some food. You met us, and Lambo and my new friend Brent. Like that guy.
Good guy.
Yeah, really good guy. And we hung out and had some of their food and a little bit of their wine and some dessert as well.
How was that chocolate tiramisu? Okay. About how it looked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Understand.
It wasn't $12 worth.
Understood.
You know?
Understood. I thought the apps in general were pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. I got full.
Yeah, understood.
Um,
And you didn't have to cook
and
that
I didn't have to cook. That was exactly where I was going. But the service was awesome. Every lady in there was sweet as could be,
The
and
views are phenomenal. up
views
there.
are phenomenal. And we ended up staying. I guess you and Lambo left, and we stayed up there. And I think Bob and Diane wandered in after you guys left, I think.
Yeah, very definitely after we left.
And they had brought their own food, which they were cool with because the kitchen was already closed. And we opted to stay there as long as we could just to take advantage of the AC.
And stay out of the bugs because
Stay out of the bugs.
bugs where I want to preface this. This is not a regular bug of the 4R property. So it's not a feature of the 4R property. The bugs were out of control for two primary reasons.
All the rain.
We've had a ton of we've had a ton of rain here. They've had more up there. And where our camping area was right next to the creek.
Yeah.
So that area was buggy like I've never seen it. I felt like I was in Louisiana, to be honest with you.
It was strange, though, because it didn't seem like there were any mosquitoes. It was all gnats or whatever you want to call them.
Where I parked my truck,
Mm-hmm.
that little grove there, for whatever reason, was very thick with mosquitoes in the late afternoon. Probably while you guys were still hanging out up at the tasting room. And that's when Lambo and I went ahead and set up the solo stove as the fire pit. Then was just to start creating some smoke to start chasing stuff off.
Solo stove's not the best thing to create smoke. I mean, it's literally supposed to be a smokeless fire pit.
Which is why I overfilled it.
Yeah.
So it was creating smoke.
It's ironic.
Well, the whole point, because there were fire rings there,
Yeah.
but it was tall grass around all the fire rings.
Yeah.
And I was convinced that the tall grass would be very chiggerific
Yeah.
myself.
But that was so much fun Friday night. Just hanging out around the solo stove. You
And
know,
once the sun went down and the bats came out, the bugs went away.
yeah, it got borderline pleasant. There was a breeze a couple of times. It was magnificent. The company was great. Conversation was great. It was great to see Lambo.
Fantastic to see
Yeah.
Lambo. He
Great.
drove all the way from Steamboat Springs, Colorado.
That is crazy. I asked him, I guess it was on Sunday when we got back. I go, so really, what are you doing down here? Like, what else are you doing while you're here? And he goes, nothing. I'm driving back after this. And I was like, you're welcome to stay at my place. And he goes, yeah, I'm headed back to Denver. He goes, that would kind of be the wrong direction. I go, I mean, I figured I'd offer. My wife's out of town and whatever. But he goes, no, I literally drove down here just for this. And I was like, wow. I felt like maybe I under-delivered for such a large effort, you know? So
I think he had a good time.
Yeah.
I think he did. And I was definitely glad to see him. And
Yeah.
And I think I will do, if not a proper chef's kiss, it might be a shade tree barbecue trip up in Colorado, second half of August, and get him to give some suggestions for a weekend and a spot that would be convenient for him.
That would be fun.
So that, and then it was warm Friday evening. It was still just almost cool enough to be not comfortable, but not uncomfortable, just almost.
I made some tactical faux pas Friday night that I've definitely learned from. I did not want to be cold, which I know sounds funny, but when you're in a hammock, you get airflow on all sides, and it tends to be a lot colder than what the temperature says. So I packed an underquilt, and I deployed it straight out of the get-go, which I should not have. And my hammock has a option between a solid top and just a bug net top. And my solid top was still on from the last trip we did, which I can't remember what that was off the top of my head. I would have changed that out for the bug net topping. And I had my rain fly up because we were supposed to get rain. And we did get a little bit, tiny bit of rain that night. But I had it set up and ready to go, but I had both sides of it on one side. And in retrospect, I should have had them on the other side, just for airflow purposes. But I still slept really well.
So let's see.
Warmer than I wanted.
Our camping configurations amongst the group. We had 3 of y'all in hammocks.
Mm-hmm.
Lambo was doing his truck camper. Brent was on the ground in a tent. I was on the ground in a tent. And then Bob and Diane were, I think, in the back of the truck. I don't know if
I think they had a rooftop tent.
Was it a rooftop tent
Yeah.
on the back of the truck or something like that?
And I have to say, Brent I didn't get a good look at it, but it seemed like the smallest tent I've ever seen in my entire life.
I didn't look that closely. I think it was a bikepacking tent.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
Yeah.
I was using my Blacktail 2-person Big Agnes dome tent that I like. I like those a lot, which actually gave me enough room. I had an air conditioner in mine.
Oh, yeah, I saw that in
I
the
had
back of
to-
your truck.
I had the Icy Breeze cooler.
I was getting something out of the bed of your truck, and I was like, this son of a bitch.
And it worked pretty well. I mean, it did not turn the tent into an ice chest. It was blowing cool air directionally where I wanted it, which was my head, my face and my chest. And I was comfortable, and it died. Well, died isn't the right word. It stopped blowing cold. I think I turned it on around 10, and about 3 it stopped blowing cold. But that's when the wind picked up, and we were getting the big winds blowing through as the edge of the storm was right there. It seemed like we were going to get pounded with a storm, which we never really did. We had, I guess, some sprinkles that hit us. But did you notice that you probably didn't, because Lambo and I went up to the tasting room so he could get cell phone signal before we left, and everything up there was just flooded out. So that's how close that storm came to us. It was storming like hell up at the top of the ridge at the tasting room, and we hardly got anything.
When I was getting breakfast ready and stuff, I looked in that direction. It was just black. And I was like, I turned to, I think, Caleb or Adam, and I go, we might get screwed here.
Yep.
And I told Caleb, I go, I don't have a contingency for cooking if it's raining. Like, in retrospect, there's many things I could have left with my truck that could have been
utilized potentially, or at least cared for.
I could have had a canopy. I could have had a coffee maker. I could have had folding chairs. There's a number of things
and that was the whole point of this weekend.
Yeah.
We knew this was going to be a learning experience, and we'll definitely be debriefing those details, because some of it I can care for, but if it's things you're able to care for too.
Well, my purpose, or not purpose, but my main thought process was make sure the food is about as good as it can be given the circumstances, and make sure everybody gets enough food.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last thing I wanted, was people to eat and go, God, I wish I would have had more food. Is this going to be enough for me to ride 50 miles tomorrow, And so I admittedly got in the weeds with just menu execution, logistics, and forgot about all the frou-frou stuff that I could have done for myself and my crew. And like I said, leaving my truck there, I could have had 20 different things that would have been a luxury, if you will.
Or potentially an essential, depending on the situation.
So that was definitely a learning experience. But all in all, I think the food, I think breakfast was really good Saturday morning. I think that was plenty of food to fuel everybody.
Let's go a bit in depth on it. Let's talk about this Saturday morning. Chef's Kiss provided breakfast.
Yeah, so I did, in lieu of making tortillas, I bought some tortillas on my way out of town at La Azteca right in Denton. And they have fresh corn tortillas that are made at, I think, right around the corner. And so they're hot when you get them, so I had to intentionally let them cool before I got there. And by the time I got to Ponderosa, they were cool, so I put them in a...
4R.
Or, no, by the time I got to
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ponderosa,
Okay.
they were cool, so I put them in a
that's right.
gallon Ziploc bag.
Yeah, you went to Ponderosa
Yeah.
first on Thursday.
And then I put them in a gallon Ziploc bag and put them in the cooler so they would stay fresh. Part of my prep I had done was I did some salt-crusted potatoes, and then I cut those in half, put those in a container, and then I pre-cooked my bacon, drained it, cooled it, and cut it so it would be ready to go. Fired up the grill and grilled all my ingredients for a salsa and made a molcajete salsa.
So you did that at Ponderosa?
No, I did that at my house.
Okay.
So all that was kind of staged, and then I forgot a component to all of it. I had Mexican crema to go on top of the tacos and forgot to take it out of the ice chest.
That would have been nice.
Yeah, it would have been nice. It would have been really nice.
I was like, there's something missing here.
And, it's the thought that counts, they say.
Tell me about the Mexican crema.
It's basically like a runny sour cream, you
Okay.
know, but it's got that nice tang zip. But
So we had salsa, eggs, potatoes, and baked cheese. Cheese we added ourselves, right?
yeah,
And tacos for
Yep.
Saturday breakfast. And that
nothing screams Texas like
that
a...
salsa was dynamite.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's one of my new favorite salsas. Salsa is one of those things you can make it 1,000 different ways. But my kids, for Father's Day last year, got me a huge, I mean, I say huge, I mean, it's literally this big. It's a foot across, molcajete, made by a company
I did see that.
called
yeah.
Hacienda. And I sat on it for a
and,
while.
And for those that don't know, what is a molcajete?
It's usually made out of volcanic rock, and it's a mortar and pestle, essentially. Very traditional in Mexican cuisine for a number of things. Grinding spices, grinding all kinds of stuff. You can make pesto in it. You can make salsas in it. You can do spice blends in it. You can even grind grains in it if you're so inclined. But so that's one of my new favorite ways to make salsa. Just when you muddle everything together, it just force melds things versus running a blender where you get a puree, if you will.
Yep. I get it.
Because, there's some people don't like their salsa chunky. Some people like it like a soup
And
almost.
It definitely came through in the flavor and the texture.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. It was a unique salsa base, and I really enjoyed it.
So I figured that was a good Texas staple for breakfast, and it was fairly easy to execute and perceive values pretty good. It was also a part of the thought process. Well, we didn't need plates and forks and all that business. We could roll with a roll of paper towels and be good to go. I also did sliced watermelon. That watermelon was perfect.
That was the best watermelon I've had in quite a while.
And it was ice cold. And I had house smoked sea salt as well as a regular sea salt to go with that, because my thought was electrolytes and just watermelon being naturally hydrating and just to give a little bit more in case somebody wanted something sweet or whatever. And then I had bars for people to carry with them. Nobody took any of those bars, interestingly enough, that day.
And I remember you putting them out and talking about them, and I didn't even look at them again. Were those store-bought bars or homemade bars?
Oh, they were store-bought. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, they were from Costco. They're good though. They're protein.
I never had a chance to check them out.
Oh yeah.
And maybe the others didn't either, or something like that.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Bob and Diane looked at them and said, "Nah, we're good. We got plenty of food." And I think Brent did similar.
Okay.
And I think Lambo might have actually taken one.
Now,
or
I,
two.
I do want to throw this in there
Mhm.
because it kind of got swept under the rug, so to speak. But going back to that watermelon
Mm-hmm.
and that smoked sea salt, that was like a perfect. I'm one of those, I typically don't salt the watermelon.
You've been missing out,
No,
buddy.
I've salted watermelon
Yeah.
before, and that's what I'm saying. I'm perfect, particularly with a good watermelon, and that was an excellent melon.
Mm-hmm.
But that smoked sea salt on there was perfect.
Yeah, it's a really
Showing.
really good touch. And then I think that's it for breakfast. So I cleaned up and put most everything back in the ice chests and packed up everything, put it on the bike, and then we rolled. Bob and Diane rolled out early. They were on a mission. I think they left at 8. I put breakfast out early intentionally because they had talked about wanting to leave early.
Yep. So, yeah, they went out ahead of the crew
Yeah,
a good 15 or 20 minutes,
I'd say 30.
probably
Yeah.
closer to 30.
And I had given a directive or advice that, everybody was on their own for lunch. And there was going to be, I think there was 2 stops that day. And the second stop was Forestburg, wherever you saw fit. But there's not many places in Forestburg. There's the Dollar General and
The general store.
yeah, the general store. And I said, I highly recommend you having lunch at the general store. It's a great place for lunch.
They've got a back of the general store grill
Mhm.
going at least all day Saturday. I don't know if they're open on Sundays or not. I have to check.
That I don't know. It's like an oasis, though. They've got cold drinks. They've got the grill running in the back. I mean, it's not going to win a Michelin star, but it definitely, the food was so good.
I will say this. The worst cup of coffee I've ever had in my life was out of that general store. But that was a long time ago, and the pot may have been on the burner for several hours at that point.
Well, you have to think competition breeds excellence, and they have zero competition.
Zero competition. But
So,
yeah, everybody raved over the food itself,
yeah.
and they had Mexican Cokes there,
Yes.
Topo Chicos.
Yeah. I had
So-
one of each. Yeah, it was perfect. And then the route getting to Ponderosa from there was absolutely gorgeous still. That's when it got hot after we left there, or probably right before we got there, because we had beautiful cloud cover that morning.
Oh,
And-
the morning weather was ideal.
Yeah, and then we got rained on a little bit, which nobody was mad
Nobody
about.
was complaining about. No,
I wouldn't even say rained. It wasn't like
sprinkled.
Yeah. Heavy
It
sprinkle.
spit on us a little bit.
Yeah.
Somebody has once said weather is always a factor,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be positive and negative. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about that. I don't think any of us expected that cool morning, Saturday morning,
Yeah.
particularly after a
How hot it
slightly
was Friday.
stuffy Friday night. And, as stated, weather is always a factor, and wild animals are always a factor.
Yeah.
I mean, right out of the gate, literally,
Oh,
coming
yeah.
out of 4R, had a nice little rattlesnake sighting.
That's the biggest timber rattler I've seen in person ever.
Pretty darn close. It was every bit of 4 feet, possibly longer. I don't think it was longer, but it was definitely well over 3.
It was eating healthy too. That was a chunky boy. In fact, when we rode by, I pointed it out, and like you said, we were a mile out. So I pointed it out, and I go, snake. And we got down the road just a little bit, and I turned to Caleb, and I go, do you see the size of that timber rattler? He goes, that wasn't a rattlesnake.
Oh, yeah.
I go, yeah. I go, what do you think it was? He goes, I don't know, a king snake? I go, no, there's no king snake that looks so much like that. And so it wasn't until 5 or 6 miles later that you and Adam came rolling by and told me that y'all got footage and pictures and stuff. And I was like, so what kind of snake was it? Where Caleb could hear.
You're right,
Y'all
right.
both went timber rattler. And I was like, yeah, thought I knew. I've been spending a lot of time not a lot of time, but what kind of snake is this on Facebook? And it's been a tremendous resource because now I've gotten to where I can identify numerous snakes just by visuals and quickly from learning through that, because people will post pictures of snakes and then it doesn't tell you what it is. You have to go to the comments to read the top comment, so you can kind of test yourself. And it's been a great resource for me. So I knew immediately it was a timber rattler because thanks to that page.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
So that was cool. Saw plenty of snakes, actually. I think I saw 3 or 4 copperheads over the course of the weekend. All little bitty, like 1-footers, and they were all dead in the road.
Oh, really?
Unfortunately. Saw tons of, Sunday, saw so many rabbits. I mean, probably saw 100 rabbits on Sunday, and quite a few jackrabbits. Interestingly, because we had talked about
that. Yeah, that after leaving Ponderosa, I saw more jackrabbits than I've seen in years.
Yeah, we had one that was running down the road in front of us, and there was a 10-second period where we were all like, "What is that?" And then I saw the ears, and I was like, "Oh, that's a jackrabbit." It was huge. Saw probably, I don't know, half a dozen jackrabbits, but even more just field rabbits, whatever you call them. I don't even know.
Bunnies. Cottontail bunnies.
Yeah. I'm not exaggerating when I say we might have seen 100 rabbits. It was crazy. And
roadrunners.
I saw probably 5 or 6 roadrunners.
Deer. Bunch of deer.
Saw some deer. It was pretty.
So
very pretty.
This was outside of the ordinary on my end in that I did get to ride with y'all for a bit Saturday morning to St. Joe, and then I turned from St. Joe and went back to 4R. Make no mistake, it was very nice to be able to ride my bike with a group, and I enjoyed that route, what I got to ride of it. But my Sunday routine was more like my normal event routine, and I was much more comfortable. And I'm always uncomfortable being on the bike when we have a thing going on.
Yeah, but I mean, I know it wasn't really stated, but the whole premise was you're self-supported unless you want to throw stuff in Kevin's truck.
You are, but I mean, I had to hustle to make sure I got to. I just did get to Forestburg, as y'all did.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And then
perfect timing, though. I mean, you couldn't have timed it any better.
It worked out just right.
Yeah.
And then I got to Ponderosa, and it was like, well, it'd be nice to maybe get a nap. No, there was no nap there.
Yeah.
And things like that. And then we got into the Ponderosa Guest Ranch festivities.
How awesome is that place?
That property is fantastic. I'm so torn because Lori's so cool, so I wish her the best in whatever she wants to do. But I'm kind of hoping she doesn't find a buyer. I'm definitely hoping she doesn't find a buyer.
I know.
But I'm not gonna wish her ill by any imagination.
I tell her the same thing. Like, I want whatever you need to make you happy happen, but I don't want you to.
I'm going to be selfish about this part until as long as I can be.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, it was an amazing property.
She's done a great job there, and the views there are incredible.
They're not 4R level, but if you hadn't been to 4R, you would go, these are the best views in the area.
Yeah, but the accommodations are way better.
And we're getting there.
Yeah,
we're definitely getting there.
I was well, let's get into dinner. I forgot what time we got there. It was probably 3 o'clock or something.
Ish. Yeah, sure.
No, it was well before that. I'm sorry. It was like 1:30 or 2.
I'm about to say it was actually 2.
Yeah. So we got there and everybody.
Yeah, I was counting on 3 so I could get a nap.
Yeah. So everybody got cleaned up in their appropriate places, and we didn't set up because it was so hot. The goal was to eat, and then before the sun went down to identify where we were going to camp. And we spent the whole afternoon indoors. Everybody did.
Yep.
It was
broiling hot.
Hot.
Saturday afternoon, no doubt about it. And it kept getting hotter.
Yeah. And I put out charcuterie display about 4 o'clock. I was going to put it out at 4:30, but I put it out at 4 just so people could have something to munch on leading up to dinner, and dinner was scheduled for 6.
And that was kind of our first course, right?
Yeah, it's technically the first course. Homemade crackers, a couple of 3 cheeses, and then some olives and some Peruvian peppers.
Those olives were dynamite.
I love those olives. I'm addicted to them. It's a chili tangerine olive, and it's just, even if you're not a huge, I've converted people to olive.
I'm not a big olive guy.
Yeah. And then some grapes and strawberries and some sliced meats. I had some capicola and some sopressata, and it was good stuff. Some cashews. And so we all munched on that and had a couple of beverages. There were cold beers flowing. And then about 6 o'clock, I had brought up, so I really wanted to serve bread and butter, and I'd been thinking about how do I do this, and then I was like, oh yeah. So I baked a loaf on Thursday morning and then let it cool and brought it up to 4R, and about an hour before dinner service I wet the whole loaf and put it in the oven at like 400 degrees for about 10 or 15 minutes just to refresh it, and you can even tell that it was cooked 2-3 days ago. Homemade butter. And then I did a salad, a spring mix, strawberries and dates, and a homemade dressing. I don't know what happened. Bought a cucumber. There was supposed to be cucumber in that salad. That cucumber, I can't find it anywhere. It's not in my ice chest. It's not in my garage fridge where I staged everything.
Caleb got a hold of it, I bet.
It was interesting, though.
Oh, hold
That's
on.
the other reason I don't like to tell people what's on the menu, is because if something,
No, something goes sideways.
I can.
What happened to this?
Yeah, I can recover, and most people will be unaware.
I do want to do a slight rewind. We're definitely going to come back to the main meal, but before I forget, because at the opening we touched on how this could have very easily have just gone completely sideways and gone to shit. As y'all were setting up hammocks, the trees that...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think...
This is Friday afternoon, Friday night setup.
Yeah. They need to do some poison ivy mitigation on those trees.
I don't think anyone else has probably used them for hammocks aside from y'all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will forward that feedback to 4R. You noticed it. So you avoided the tree, and I wasn't there for that. So did you give them a heads up, or were they already too deep into it before?
No, I said, hey boys, you see this? This is all poison ivy. And I went about my own business.
Sure.
And they just set up. I don't know. I'm not their father.
No, I understand.
And the irony of the whole thing is poison ivy doesn't affect me at all.
Well, that's what Caleb said too.
No, Caleb said he's had to get shots, steroid shots and stuff.
My bad.
But
maybe he just said he wasn't worried about it.
Yeah, he wasn't worried about it until he was. So,
and I laugh with, not at, because I've found myself in this situation as well, not quite Adam's situation, but so Caleb and Adam both ended up with poison ivy.
Suspected poison ivy, yes. I don't know. Not a doctor, but they both complained of poison ivy symptoms.
And Adam complained of the symptoms in the worst spot.
Worst spot, yeah. I guess it could have been worse. It could have been on his bum.
In his bum.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was unfortunate, and if they were diligent, there were other trees. We were all pretty zonked by that time, though. And the whole mission was to get set up, cleaned up, and get to the top of the hill where the AC and the food was. And I think they were
focused on that.
They were food and AC motivated.
That's understandable. All right.
Yeah.
So back to Saturday evening main event dinner.
So we had salad, bread and butter.
Let's not downplay the salad. Let's go into a little, you talked about the missing cucumber, which now that you do bring it up, a little bit of cucumber would have been nice.
It would have been really nice. I even asked my wife, I go, the fuck happened to that cucumber? Because I picked up the cucumber. I made my joke that I always make, like, because I always pick a big girthy cucumber. And I always turn to Paula and I go, see the size of my cucumber? And I put it in the buggy. I know I paid for it. I've got the receipt. And somehow we didn't either make it home with it or it got out of the truck. It's not in the truck, but it never made it to 4R or Ponderosa. But so we had the soup or the salad, the bread and butter.
And what was the dressing in the salad again?
It was just a homemade dressing.
You're underselling it. Let's talk about this some more, because that salad was dynamite too.
So I make my salad dressings in a pint-sized mason jar, is the way I always make them. Egg yolk, Dijon, 1 clove of grated ginger or garlic. When I say grated, I do it on a microplane. And then I go 2-2-2 on all my stuff, meaning I usually use 2 forms of sweetener, 2 forms of vinegar, and then at least 2 forms of salt, and then olive oil. So I did Japanese rice wine vinegar, like a true rice wine vinegar, not the generic stuff. And then sherry vinegar, a good barrel-aged sherry vinegar. And then I used agave nectar and honey. Because the agave nectar sweetens it, but it doesn't leave a footprint, if you will. You can't taste it. And you're not going to pick out agave nectar in a salad dressing. And then the honey just compounds the sweetness because it's a little bit more, for lack of a better term, it's sweeter. And it leaves a little bit of a note. And then I use a good tamari soy sauce. So it's a gluten-free soy sauce. And coconut amino acids is another salt component. And then a little bit of nutritional yeast flakes, which is also another salt umami component. And then just a touch of, I do sea salt after I combine everything and taste it, and I use my sea salt to adjust the saltiness if it needs more salt.
Okay.
So all that goes into a jar, healthy amount of Texas olive oil, lid on, shake. Just shake the mess out of it, taste it, adjust seasoning, and that's it.
And that was on a spring mix.
On spring mix.
Strawberries
and dates.
Yep. And those bites that got a bit of date in them were definitely the highlight.
It's a happy little treat. But that dressing is, I do downplay it, but it's delicious. And I get tons of compliments on it.
It was excellent.
But the pro move is to eat the salad and then the dressing that's left behind, use your bread as a spoon.
Sop it with, yeah. Oh. Unfortunately, I didn't have any dressing or bread left at that point.
That's the best.
Man, I can see that now.
And then I had gotten some sea bass and portioned it out, made a miso marinade. So that's obviously miso. It was a light miso, mirin, sake, a good junmai, however you say it, junmai sake, and then a little cane sugar. That gets mixed up, and then it went on the fish, and then I vacuum sealed it. And ideally, that's supposed to marinate for 3 days. So that was perfect for this window. I did that Thursday morning. Saturday night was about right. That I pulled that out, temped it up. I had already part of my staging everything. I had pre-foiled a pan, which is one of the things one of the very rare things I use foil for, and put that down. And I made forbidden rice to go with that, chicken stock and water and bay leaves and sea salt and homemade butter. And then I had pre-blanched and shocked my broccoli and seasoned it. And so that was ready to go. I put that down on a pan, and roasted that in the oven. And so that was the main course. It was miso sea bass, forbidden rice, and oven roasted broccoli, essentially. And we had so much food. I mean, it was, but I think everybody had plenty of food.
Yeah, I don't think anybody went hungry.
Yeah. And then the plan was to start a fire, but it was still so miserable. And we were going to do s'mores by the fireside. I thought that would be fun. I think everybody was tired, and we decided to do oven s'mores, which were still delicious. But the real treat was we were a little over ambitious with our oven s'mores, and we made probably 8 too many. And so we just plastic wrapped them and left them overnight. And that was, dare I say, my favorite breakfast item on Sunday morning before we rolled. I had overnight oats. I made a dairy-free and a regular dairy-laden version. We had whole fruit. I had bars once again. And then I had the rest of that watermelon with salt and smoked sea salt. No, I didn't have smoked sea salt that morning. I left that at 4 hours. And then I had yogurt, both non-dairy and regular, if people were so inclined. I think that was it.
So the overnight oats themselves, forgive my ignorance. How do you make overnight oats?
So, I did a protein oat from Bob's Red Mill, whole grain or whole oats, steel cut.
Steel cuts?
Or whatever they are. They're whole oats, though. Did those, chia, hemp hearts, maple syrup, sea salt, vanilla, a little bit of cinnamon, a little Saigon cinnamon. And then in the non-dairy, I did oat milk, which I forgot to bring to Ponderosa. I left it in my refrigerator at the house. That was another oversight. And then I did a cashew-based yogurt in there to give it creaminess. And basically, you put your oats in a container and you fill it about 2/3 of the way, and then you top it off with your fluid and your yogurt, and then you give it a good stir. And as they refrigerate, they hydrate. And so they expand, and they absorb all that fluid, and the chia gets hydrated, and the hemp hearts get hydrated, and the yogurt just lends to the creaminess. And then for the dairy version, I did homemade buttermilk, which is a byproduct of me making butter, and it's not a cultured buttermilk like you're used to. It's not thick and globular. It's thin, it almost looks like a skim milk.
Okay.
You know. And then I did a yogurt out of Austin Stone Mountain, whole milk yogurt for those, and I think they're delicious.
Oh.
And it's a good snack before you get on the bike, as long as you don't have dairy issues, obviously.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try that non-dairy one and have that waiting on me one morning.
Yeah, but you can meal prep them. You could do it in small jars and make 5 of them at the same time, and they're there every morning you open the refrigerator, you know. So
definitely on my to-do list. Now, before we go too far into Sunday, I do want to backtrack to Saturday a little bit, and probably the biggest advantage of Ponderosa Guest Ranch in this situation, which was almost not an advantage. Again, things could have gone sideways. I can't reinforce this enough. It was hot as hell Saturday evening. I'm not talking Saturday afternoon. After the sun went down, it was still broiling. It was the weirdest.
it was miserable.
It was the weirdest thing. Now, we had the central cabin there, which is where we were serving food and everything like that, and hanging out, which worked out really well. There were smaller cabins on site, but only Bob and Diane had reserved one of those. Everyone else was still planning to do the hammocks and tent camping.
Myself included.
And everything else. And it was unanimous. Nobody wanted to sleep outside Saturday night.
No, and in retrospect, I wish I would have, honestly. I slept pretty piss poor that night. I opted to sleep on that, air quotes, couch.
We'll call it a sofa.
It's more like a padded bench.
Yeah.
And it's ironic because I've taken many a nap on there, in between meals when I've been up there working. But trying to sleep on it was a different story. And the irony of all ironies is I woke up freezing and I had no covers. And so I sat there thinking, and I was like, well, I could go unpack my bike and get my underquilt out, but my underquilt's only, I don't know, like 42 inches long.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have just been a tease. And then I was like, oh, she brought bath towels over for people to take showers, and one of them didn't get used. So I went into the bathroom and got that, and that was borderline comical, trying to cover up with a towel.
I saw you covered up when I got up in the morning.
And
I thought you looked pretty comfortable myself.
I slept off and on that night. That was not my best night of sleep. But I wasn't burning up, but I also wasn't comfortable. I think in retrospect, if I could go back, I would have set up my hammock underneath that pavilion that's right there next to the kitchen, essentially, and not put an underquilt on. I would not have had to run a rain fly, and I think I would have slept better. But
I think you were the odd man out there. I think everyone else appreciated their cabin setups one way or another.
Oh, I mean, it definitely had its merit. I wasn't hot.
Right.
And I had a bathroom.
So Ponderosa Guest Ranch, they have several cabins there.
And a converted bus.
Which counts as one of the cabins. Yeah. And like I said, some of our folks had reserved one of the cabins. They didn't plan on it. Adam and Caleb ended up snagging another cabin, but that was a little bit of a production because Lori wasn't expecting those cabins to be utilized. So that's a takeaway on the debrief, that maybe we make arrangements ahead of time, not just for this property, but any other properties we do something like this. Hey, people are planning to do this, but it's been our experience in the past that if weather's not what people are expecting, there may be some last minute bookings.
Yeah.
Be prepared. But then everyone else just stretched out on the floor in the main cabin there and made do.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, all of these pieces could have added up to where people were miserable and the weekend was a bust. But I think the basics of good food and good route make everything else come together, as long as you got something to work with.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
And the stops were about where they needed to be.
Well, that was another thing. I liked on Sunday being able to be that in-between stop.
Dude, I have to tell you that was probably the best happy surprise, seeing you when we did, because it was hot. We were struggling at that point, and just seeing you and knowing that there was cold drinks in the back of your truck, and we thought we were still 10 plus miles from the store, and I was already, I think, on my third or fourth bottle. I carried 4 bottles, which I thought was maybe too much when I rolled out Friday. It wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't. 4 bottles was, I tend to drink a lot of fluids when I ride, but I think on Friday I was on my 4th bottle by the time we got to the first stop. So it was, and when we saw you on Sunday, I think I was into either the tail end of my 3rd bottle or the beginning of my 4th bottle. And we had stopped for something. I think somebody had to make an adjustment to something. I think maybe Adam was taking off his handkerchief because it was too hot. And people were grabbing bites, and I was like, I don't think I need to eat right now. I had calories in my bottle and stuff. And it wasn't 10 minutes later, I was like, I should have eaten, because I started to feel a little hungry, and then it gets scary because it's like, it's too late.
It was a little late at that point, yeah.
And I had been carrying since Friday. Caleb had bought the J&J fried pies that are in the cardboard box, and I had been carrying it since Friday.
A Spinistry staple.
Yeah.
Episode 106, brought to you by J&J Fried Pies.
And so that was the other just blessing in disguise, because as soon as I saw you, I immediately went, now I get to eat my pie. And that pie was amazing. and then had a ice cold Dr. Pepper from you, and topped off I think just 1 or 2 water bottles. And like I said, we still thought we were 10 miles plus from the store, and we weren't. We were 5 or 6
5 or
miles.
6
Yeah.
probably from there.
Still went
A
to
lot
the
of
store.
pavement too.
Yeah. Still went to the store and got all the things. Because I think that was the last stop.
Yeah, it was the only stop that day.
Yeah. And then rolled out from there. We spent very little time at that store. I mean, overall, it was probably 10, 12 minutes. Filled up waters and got some salty snacks and another Coca-Cola, electrolytes, and all that business. And rolled out. And then after that is when it got really hot. That last,
15 miles.
really the last like 8 to 10 miles was,
Basically, when you got all the way north and then turn back towards 4R.
yeah, it was tough. Luckily, there was an intermittent breeze, and that was somewhat helpful. But I was cooked. I was just tired. But finished, and like I said, we went and stood under the spigot, took turns under the spigot, and that was amazing. And then everybody kind of got changed and packed up, and Adam and Caleb and myself, we rolled back in my truck, and you had left us some glorious cold beers in my ice chest, and they were still ice cold when we got there.
I tried to pack them as well as I could.
Yeah, so we had a couple of beers, and then we stopped because I didn't have any water in my truck. That was the other thing I could have done, is stage some cold water for us when we were done. So we stopped as soon as we got into Munster. It was Munster or St. Joe, and got some cold water and blah, blah, blah. And it was awesome. It was a good weekend. And then I rode on Monday too. But I just rode my normal little 13-mile loop just to recover and spin the legs, because I knew we were going to ride last night. So
Very good. I do want to thank you for your contributions to the weekend. It wouldn't have been a success without that. That was most assuredly a key component. I don't think it was perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it was more than good enough.
yeah, I mean, I had no expectations of it being perfect, but I think it was, for a first run, I was happy. There's definitely more stuff to consider, and with every venue, the challenges are going to change.
It's going to be different every venue, and that's part
Yeah.
that's part of the debrief. Do we want to try to find other things to do, or do we want to perfect one first, then move on to the next one? I mean, we're not going to make that determination right here
Yeah.
and now, but those are the things that are kind of going through my head, because it's like,
Bikepacking season's over, so
kind of yes, kind of no. So
locally.
we're going to do something that July 25th or whatever it is weekend that I was talking about. And let me make sure I got the date, because anyone that's listening to this is, what the hell are you talking about? It's going to be too fucking hot then. But let me sketch it out, and we don't have to figure it all out right now. But yeah, Friday night, July 25th through Sunday, July 27th.
Okay.
So what I've got set up at the moment, it's a different beast. It's a totally different scenario. But it's built around the availability of air-conditioned cabins. And basically we're gonna start from Fort Richardson State Park in Jacksboro both Saturday and Sunday, and have overnight accommodations Friday and Saturday, where bunk beds and cabins are available to everyone. It's not necessarily going to be included. I'm going to more than likely set the pricing based on camping, but there's a rock wall formation there, and I have all in a big shaded area. So I have all of those camping spots reserved. So anybody that wants to come in as low cost as possible It includes camping, but if they definitely want an air-conditioned cabin bunk, that's going to be available for a slight upcharge. And probably if somebody wants a private cabin all to themselves or as a couple, we'll find a way to make that available as well. But the idea just being, get there Friday night, everybody rolls out for basically a morning ride on Saturday before it gets to 120 degrees, sort of thing. Lounge around in the afternoon, do the evening thing in the shade at the Rockwall camping area there, and everybody go back to their cabins Saturday night, and then another ride Sunday. And that gives us the flexibility to do different distances as well. Let somebody have a 50-mile ride each day if they want, or there's a 30-mile option if somebody needs something shorter. Or what the hell, if somebody wants to go big guns, maybe we do have a 100-mile route in there if somebody wants to go the distance on either day. I haven't nailed down all of those details yet, but that's the rough structure to work within, and then you and I can sit down and figure out what that weekend looks like for you. And, you know, hypothetically, it could just be where we just have a chef's kiss dinner Saturday night and everything else is arranged as spinistry chow or something like that.
Yeah.
And that way, maybe you don't have to roll in until Saturday afternoon, sort of thing. Or if you're wanting to ride, it just gives you that much more flexibility and things like that. So we'll figure all that out.
How far is it from my house to Jacksboro?
Maybe an hour and a half, maybe.
No, I mean, if I wanted to ride.
Oh, it's long, but it's been done before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had people roll from Denton to our Jacksboro stuff before.
Okay.
Rich has gone from there back to McKinney.
Yeah.
We've got routes.
Just thinking.
Understood. That is one of, don't get me wrong, I like for you to be able to ride your bike.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no doubt you riding your bike puts more burden on me to make all the other pieces come together. So just part of the figuring out how things work sort of thing. But I like you to be able to ride your bike.
But I feel like I staged everything where we didn't have to rely on you. I could have doubled back to Ponderosa and get all my stuff.
And that's what I'm saying. We'll figure out all those logistical details down the road. But in turn, for you to be able to do all those things, that takes that widens out your total days invested.
Yeah, it definitely does.
And to be perfectly frank, I need to find a way to be able to fill up the last spots on the end of that week.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a lot of people they're waiting for what's the weather going to be that weekend. I'll make my call Thursday.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So we got to figure out how to make that viable, but not be a burden on you by any stretch of the imagination. And those are the things we'll work out.
Well, in all likelihood, I will not ride from my house to Jacksboro because that'll be, I figure that's 100 miles.
But you could hypothetically ride back from Jacksboro to your house.
It probably won't feel like that either. It's going to be July.
Understood.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing this one in that format.
Yeah.
It's built around a shorter day's riding and known air conditioning and shade and everything else along those lines. And whatever little quirks Jack County has to offer that we might be able to work into the mix as well.
Dude, I think it's not a Jacksboro ride unless you go to Herds.
They won't be open on Saturdays then, though.
Sons of bitches.
Their last Saturday is maybe this weekend.
Why would they not be open on Saturday? I would think Saturday was their number one day.
They've been modifying, limiting hours and days for a while. I don't know the detail. I can only guess. I can only guess. And I don't want to guess too much.
They're ready to close up shop.
But, I mean, maybe you can give your best imitation of a Herds burger.
Hell yeah. We could totally do smash burgers. I could do that.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. What about you? You said you had some thoughts, some ideas.
It was mostly like you said, that us riding up there was an added stress factor. But to me, it was well worth it. I like that I got to tack on an extra 65 miles to the overall weekend. Just trying to get longer back-to-back rides. Still trying to get ready for a race across Texas. And carrying stuff on my bike, but not having to go whole hog. I mean, the only thing that I really didn't carry, honestly, was water filtration and cook system.
And cook setup.
Yeah. So it's not like,
And realistically, you're not going to be carrying water filtration on the rad anyway.
yeah. And
Probably not cook setup, but
probably not a cook setup either. My whole goal is to transition to gas station and whatever food I can consume along the way.
which is completely viable from Whitesboro on,
Yeah.
because you'll have Allsup's
Yeah.
along the way
Yeah.
from there.
So it'll be heat lamp food and whatever else. The only thing that will change is my sleep system. My tent is supposed to ship this month.
Mm-hmm.
It said ships in June,
Sure.
but I haven't gotten an update or anything. In fact, I logged in yesterday or the day before and tried to puzzle that out, but I got sidetracked with something else, I'm sure. But I'm interested to check that out.
I am too.
My
Looking
tent
forward
set
to
up.
that.
And I just need to keep riding my bike. And like I mentioned, coming up on July, it's going to be tougher and tougher. But my plan is to do what I did last summer and just ride my bike every day. Spend at least, an hour or two outside in the heat of the day and then go ride my bike for an hour. And that worked really well for me last summer. I got to where I was, dare I say, completely unaffected by the heat. Even it was 100 degrees and I was riding and I was fine. Acclamation is big. So
What would you say a proper acclimation time frame is if you're riding several days a week in the heat?
I mean, it depends on the person, obviously. Depends
Okay.
on
I mean, is this
how you're hydrating.
is this a 3-day process? Is
Oh,
this a 3-week
no.
process? Is this a 3-month process?
I think 3 weeks is a little bit more realistic, but it depends on your exposure too. I noticed a big difference. Now, I was doing it 7 days a week. I was getting out in the yard, jacking with the pool, jacking with plants, or whatever I could do outside and with intention for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then I would get ready and go for a ride. And I would just ride an hour. And I wasn't trying to crush it. I was just trying to keep it even. And I noticed a big difference about a week and a half in. So
Okay.
10 to 11 days. And I guess if you're doing it 3 or 4 days a week, probably 3 weeks is about right. But I don't know if you don't do it for 2 days, do you regress?
Right.
Do think that the everyday repetitive exposure made a big difference. And like I said, my Garmin, and I place little merit in it other than the trend, but it would every day say what my heat acclimation was. Just to see it go up every day was,
Okay. Reinforcing in a positive
yeah.
way.
And I don't know, maybe I'll pay a better attention this year and see if the numbers coincide with how I feel and if they seem realistic. Like when it says I'm 100%, am I 100% or am I 100% before it says 100% or whatever. So I'll try to make a conscious effort to pay closer attention to that and maybe even make some notes, because as we talk about it, I'm even more curious now, because I know it's interesting because we place value in metrics that serve us, meaning like when my fitness score through Strava goes up, I'm like, oh, that's great. But ironically, after riding 3 days this weekend, my Strava score went down, which makes no sense to me. As I rode like 170 miles in 3 days, which I haven't done that in weeks or months, or even maybe not even this year.
That should make you feel pretty good about getting rat ready.
Yeah. But my heat acclimation after this weekend only showed like 23%, and it showed that I was trending down, even though we rode in absolute heat. I feel like we rode last night, and yesterday was a blessing compared to everything we rode in this week or weekend. It was interesting because I don't get too locked in on all the metrics, but I did have an interesting observation. I rode Monday, and I rode my normal kind of route. I ride from my house basically to Jeter and do the Jeter box and come back. And when you finish, on Strava it says compare this to your previous efforts, and I had like, 60 efforts on the same route.
Right.
And so just on a whim, I looked, and my time was like 54 minutes or something, whatever it was, 54, 43 or whatever it was. And so I looked down, and the last time I had done that time, I was literally like that exact time, was back in December. And my relative effort score for Monday was like 38. And back in December, it was like 110. And I looked at the comparison, like my heart rate for Monday was average like 132 or something. The same effort back in December was like 160 average heart rate. Big difference.
Sounds like you're getting fitter.
But I don't feel like it.
Well, you're not supposed to. Well, yeah. I think that's a good topic of discussion for next week.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this riding everyday approach and what your experience has been since you started playing with it for.
Well, I know my problem.
A little over a year now, right?
I've taken breaks.
But that's when you started.
Yeah.
Following that approach, in theory.
I just think I haven't been putting any efforts in.
Let's talk about it next week. I think that's a good place to take things because you do have to adjust along the way.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Anything we didn't touch on that you felt we should have covered about Chef's Kiss weekend, or?
I never got to kiss anybody. I thought that's what the whole premise of the weekend was.
All right. Well, we'll make sure to charge extra for that next time around.
Go ride your bike.
This bill legalizes sawed-off short guns.
Culinary.